So we're going to look at lesson planning using UDL to support SRL in the classroom. So how do I plan a lesson? Planning a lesson that supports SRL can be easy. Your first lessons may take some time, and it's important not to get frustrated. After all, this is also about your SRL. Let's look at a lesson plan. We can break it into 4 sections, and these are the 4 sections of the UDL framework: instructional goals, methods, assessments, and materials. Please note that this lesson plan is available for you to download in MS Word format at the end of this post. Questions to ask when planning and assessing in a UDL framework. So when planning, what's the basic idea that the students need to learn? And what are the different ways they can learn this idea? Through demonstration, games, shared experience? If there's reading involved, do they have to read it by themselves, or can they use other tools and strategies to get at the information? This applies for writing. If there's writing involved, do they have to write it by themselves, or can they use other tools and strategies to present the information? With regards to assessment, is a test the best way to find out whether the students learned the information? If not, in what different ways can students show their understanding? And which will be more meaningful for them? Think about SRL. It needs to be a non-threatening assessment for students to be able to regulate their learning and understanding. So instructional goals. This is where you see how your goals for your students' learning fits with the provincial guidelines. Descriptions of the unit and learning outcomes for the unit will not change during the unit, but your lesson goals and SRL components might and probably will. The SRL components section or goals section in this lesson plan is designed to have you think about providing complex tasks, choice, control over challenge, cooperative learning, and reflective activities in each lesson. As you'll see, you're not required to have each one in each lesson. Eventually, they will be there. The methods section, this can be thought of as the meat of the lesson. You're going to base it around your pre-lesson activity where you're activating background knowledge, which is really important for the development of self-regulated learning. You're going to introduce new information in the lesson and model that information. And then you're going to provide the students with both guided practice where you're actively involved and independent practice where they work on their own. When I say independent practice and guided practice, that doesn't mean that they're necessarily working on their own. They can be working in a small group or with a peer. The wrap-up section allows the students a chance to synthesize what they've learned and ask questions and plan for the next lesson. And finally, in the assessment and materials section, I've put them together here because really this is where you're going to plan your assessment and the kind of assessment you want to do in the lesson individually and in the unit as a whole. But remember that assessment needs to be non-threatening for SRL. That means often it's as simple as having the students participate in the development of criteria. It reduces the threat, but it also increases task understanding, which is really important in SRL. Materials are just that. They're the things you need to help you accomplish the lessons. Things like computers, papers, pencils, textbooks, stories, whatever it is that you need to get the lesson done. Okay, so we know that there's 5 components and that we need to actively encourage those components to have a high-functioning SRL classroom. So we're going to look at a completed lesson plan. This is based on a grade 5 class in the province of British Columbia. It's the BCIRPs for grade 5 in social studies. And in this lesson, we'll see SRL built in to a UDL framework. Okay, so when we're looking at our sample lesson, we can see on our first page that we have our instructional goals. These include the unit goals, the goals that are outlined by the province of British Columbia, as well as our individual lesson goals for what we hope to accomplish in this lesson, and our SRL goals. Remembering that when we get to the methods section, we'll actually see that SRL is built into every part of it. This is an introductory lesson, and so there are some aspects of SRL that isn't quite as apparent. The idea of the complex task is not quite here yet, but they will get to it when they get to the project that they do in this unit. So now we're at the methods section, and for the UDL framework, this is the part that really allows you to see SRL and incorporate the 5 components. You're going to start with your pre-lesson activity. It's your place where you can activate background knowledge. You can get the students to set some goals for what they want to learn about the subject and to make some connections to their own lives. You then move on to introduce and model the new knowledge. This is the things that in the lesson you need to make sure that they've gotten and that they understand so that they can proceed with their guided practice and their independent practice. In this particular case of introducing the new knowledge, I've included a 5-minute PowerPoint. And you're saying to yourself, why a narrated PowerPoint? Well, it's fabulous if you have students who are hard of hearing or have ADHD or a learning disability where they need some form of multimodal transmission of knowledge. You're providing an alternate form and a form that they can refer back to throughout the lesson and throughout the unit. You're going to give the students opportunity to do guided practice where you're there to scaffold their learning and ensure that they're moving in a positive direction. You're going to also give them chances to work independently. And by independent, again, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're working alone. They could be working in a group or with a peer. In the wrap-up section, you're giving them a chance to synthesize their knowledge and to ensure that they have plans for the next class and you can answer any questions that they have been left with. When you look at this, you're providing them with complex tasks and cooperative learning opportunities, some choice, and some ways of having some control over the challenge, and the opportunity to self-reflect, which is really important. In the assessment section, there isn't really much in this particular lesson plan because this is the first one. But here you can see that you can build in criteria that the students have access to and can work with and can help you develop for the entire unit. And for the formative assessment, it can be simple observations that are being done on a daily basis. The materials section are, of course, just that, what you're going to use. And in this case, it's chart paper, it's computers, it's headphones. And the computers allow for you to give the students the opportunity to not have to write, but to engage in their 21st century learning. Okay, so we've looked at a lesson plan. We've seen the importance of SRL in a classroom to build expert learners, and I think you can see that the UDL framework allows for you to build in SRL at every step of the way. Just the structure of the methods section of a UDL framework allows for you to build in opportunities for choice, for complex tasks, for challenge, for cooperative learning, and for self-reflection. And this will help you help students develop SRL and become expert learners.